Hello, this is Jake Williams here, and I'm going to show you, talk through my weekly devlog about my first week, uh, in the production stage towards my final outcome. So, what progress have I made this week? First of all, I have stuck to my word in my weekly journals and have continued to update my planning documents based on what I've completed over the week. So, as we can see here, uh, the top chart here, the Gantt chart that I made, it ended with experimentation and prototyping. Following on from this week's set of work, I have now moved on to developing my alpha version. So I have completed work on developing my puzzle mechanic, combat mechanics, water effects, and lighting effects. As you can see here in the green boxes here, where it wasn't ticked off before. Um, So, moving on to other planning changes, and I have been setting myself sort of daily targets that I must reach towards the end of the day. So, as you can see here, target one is what I would definitely have done before the end of the lesson. So, that would, I would have definitely completed that before the first hour and a half during the lesson. But then target two obviously will come off finish target one or sometimes in between based on whether there's a overlap. So as here we had the first day was finishing my UI design. So I started UI design. So that was the main menu settings, and also I started the how to play menu as well as the control scheme menu. Um, we'll get to them later. But after that, the second target was to add player movement and basic AI for enemy movement. I decided to go with pathfinding for the enemy movement because after previous experience in some previous projects, so my what's it called micro machines project, it's quite a while ago now. We experimented with different ways of enemy movements with sort of cars, and we stuck with sort of posts. So the car would go to another post. Once it hits that post, it goes to another one. And I felt that didn't really work with what I was trying to do because that would take forever. So if plus obviously it wouldn't be a random movement of the enemy, whereas obviously if he's playing like let's go back to one of the play tested games, Resident Evil. Obviously the enemies don't have a pre-programmed path they follow. They sort of target towards the player, so they move towards where the player is. They don't just stay along the path. So that was one of the drawbacks of going with the post to post movement. So that's why I stuck with pathfinding, because as you can see later, it works well effectively really. Plus, also it gives that random movement that I'd like to give within the game. And then my third target was to, just get my basic level layout for my first puzzle and also the lobby area. So, as I said, open world, where you'd be first sort of area that the player will be introduced into. And so, obviously, from there, the player is going to the shop building for the first level. And so, at the end of the day, and also at the end of that week, as for target three, I finished my UI design from main menu settings, control scheme, how to play, and added functionality within the buttons so they aren't just there blank doing nothing, they actually function. I also added the player movement and the pathfinding for the zombie enemies as well. And I also finished the basic level layout for the first puzzle and also the world lobby area map, whatever else to call it. Uh, so moving on from that, I obviously finished my experimentation, which also mentioned in the Gantt chart here that I updated it. So here was my experimentation. Uh, I'll show you on the Wix website where I uploaded. I'll show you that later where I uploaded it to the website. But So I have collated the research that I carried out. So that was for my second research report, which was the contextual research report, talking about different sort of practical methods that I would like to implement into my game. And so I chose lighting effects, water effects, reflections, inventory systems, and also pixel art shading and differing. But I haven't carried out the pixel art experimentation yet, as I will be carrying that out before I move into the beta phase, which is where I'd like to focus more on the pixel art, because at the moment alpha phase is just about sort of building the levels and the functionality so the game actually plays functions as it's intended, instead of just being sort of pieces of art that doesn't move. And also research into that about the different stages of development in my process research report, where we broke down the different phases of development. So it's the alpha build is built first. That is, as I mentioned, just the bare basics, so functionality, working levels, etc., different mechanics. But then obviously the beta phase is adding that final artwork into it, sort of amending any bugs that occurred during the alpha build. So that's why I decided to stick with that sort of methodology um, from my process research report. So I've applied that research to my development. But getting back to my practical experimentation, as I've mentioned, I looked at lighting effects, inventory systems, and also water systems, effects. And I experimented with two different methods for each. And I stated in my report sort of why I chose to experiment with two different methods of achieving one thing. And that's mostly because you're not just going to follow a YouTube guide and just slap it into your game and say that's it. You've got to physically experiment with something to understand how it works, if it functions as you would like it to. So that's what I did. I looked at both of the methods, carried them out practically in Construct 3, and sort of evaluated the what would you say, sort of functionality, the sort of aesthetics of the mechanic, sort of the usability of sort of inventory systems, things like that. So, yeah, that's what I did. Here I have some videos of me experimenting with the experimentation methods. Let's full screen. Here we go. HD mode. So obviously I'm going to skip through this video, just sort of skim over it basically. But this was the second method that I chose to follow in my sort of final outcome. Oh, one second, we're having technical problems here. I'm done week 2. Here we go. Let's watch this on YouTube, it'll be easier. Here we go. What's happening? We'll have to watch it like this. So we'll see, this was just me experimenting with the technique, and so the practical side, where is it? Encoding. So here, as you can see, I'm starting to build a torch, and this will come in handy for my final game. That's why I ultimately chose this method, because I'll show you later. But the first method just stuck with a static light that sort of pinned itself to the character, and it moved with the character, and I thought it didn't really look as good as I'd like it to. So obviously this person has applied well, the guide that I followed um, sort of said about how we can fix the lighting to a static object and have it sort of move in a realistic way. So the lighting will pulse and sort of move sort of realistically, really. That's what I wanted to achieve. So let's show you that here. Here we go. So see there, the lighting sort of moves here around there. So it's got a nice effect. I really like it. So going back to the, here we go. Here's the practical experimentation, sort of the one that I built in Construct 3, just to sort of demonstrate it. So here we can see, here we go, look at that. It's really good. I quite like it. So as comparing this to the method that the other method that I experimented with, which is here it is. Yes, this is my Wix website. Just all my experimentation on here. But the one that I like to focus on is the first method that I didn't choose. So here we go. So it's a very static source of lighting effect that doesn't really pulsate or anything. It's sort of very, very basic. So see, ultimately I chose the second method here because, as I said, it just looks better and it functions how I'd like it to within my outcome. And also, just comparing the two methods, the second method is more professional. It's whereas the first method is sort of just putting a PNG file onto the sprite and it's sort of just moving with the character. It doesn't really give off a lighting effect. So that is why I chose the second method of implementing these lighting effects, because obviously the flickering and also the realisticness of the colour within the sort of opacity and sort of pulsating nature of the light. It's really good. So see, also experimented with water features and reflections. Yet again, I chose the first method because this one gave a better looking effect towards the end. Here we go. Zoom this in. So as you can see here, we've got the reflections of the trees that play out here. As you can see, I mess about with this quite a bit, but here we go. There we go, look at that. So this one, I chose this method over the next method that I experimented with, just due to, again, the realisticness of the water movement, because the reflection moves as the water moves, giving that sort of wavy effect, the ripple in the water. So moving away from experimentation, I'd like to talk about how I implemented this into my current outcome, or sorry, alpha build of the game. So if we go over here, this is my version 6, yes, version 6. This is the current build of the game. Sort of, it's very, very basic, but the functionality and also the applied usability is there. So let's have a little play. So here, as I said, I finished the alpha functionality of the UI system. So as you can see here, as I move the cursor, the sort of the line and the text highlights as the player is moving the cursor over them. So they've got that player feedback on what sort of element they're going to click on instead of it being a black box and they've got no idea what they're going to click on. So let's go to the game. So here is my sort of, you see the animations functioning there correctly. So I went through several development sort of testing experimentation to get this actually working, because it's really, really hard to add that to play the animation when it should be triggered, because I don't know, something to do with the coding. It wasn't triggering at the correct time, so the animation was playing in a loop, but it was every single time it was triggering it. So it was sort of just like as it is here, it was just an idle sort of animation that was sort of playing, so sort of like the character was hovering. It didn't really bad effect. But here, I experimented with the inventory systems here, which I did mention earlier. It's also on my Wix website, but I've added it to the game and the sort of functionality at the moment. So here we go. See that? The key pops from the bin into the inventory. So let's click out of that. So you can see here as well, the water effects that I went for earlier, experimented with earlier, I've added to the game here. And also I'll show you that again on the world map, the world lobby area, as I call it. So as we move over here we go. So if we click on the key in the inventory system, as it's telling us here, to unlock door, click key object in inventory. We'll click on it and the door opens. So that's another sort of implementation of the inventory system that I experimented with. So here as well, you can see the pathfinding on this zombie enemy as he moves towards me. That's what I talked about earlier, about having a random movement of the character. It's really gives it a good effect. But here, this is my first attempt at adding sort of keyboard play input into the game. So I've never used this feature before, and I thought that to add that level of immersion into my levels and my puzzles was to have sort of codes and key code blocks that the player can interact with, sort of complete puzzles to find codes. And I stated that in my very first idea generation was to have these sort of puzzles and elements within my game. And so I've applied that knowledge and sort of that idea from my planning and my pre-production into my development phase in my game as it is now. So let's exit out of this and I'll show you where. Oh, it doesn't. Okay. So the code for this doesn't work at the moment, but it will do after I finish my second sort of week of development. So going back to the world map here. So here is yet again the water features in use here. So sprite world water. So let's go back to this. I've got no reflections at the minute because, as I said, it's the alpha build. I just want to add the functionality in before getting all arty with the pixel art. That's why the road is a blocked out grey colour and the grass is just a green side. So here we go, the water effect there. You see the ripple coming up here and also the ripple on there. So that's how I applied my experimentation to the game at the moment. And now I'd like to address some problems that arose during development of adding these features in. So here we go. This is what's talking about the animations not functioning correctly. This is an hour-long video. Let's skip through this. So I've recorded everything that I've done just so I can reflect back upon it. So here we go. Let's speed this up a little bit. So this is where I was sort of playing about with grouping, because as I've learned from the past through my previous projects, it's quite hard to identify problems within the code if it is all stacked together, but you don't understand what code is triggering, what does it relate to. So also I've created a main menu, settings page, game difficulty, volumes, so sort of the settings page that I showcased earlier. So here we go, the animation isn't playing when I'm clicking the movement button, so it's literally playing the idle animation, and it's not working properly as it should be. So here I sort of experiment with and test different methods of trying to fix this bug. So I go about triggering different animations based on if the function of 8-bit movement is, or sorry, 8 directional movement is functioning, but that didn't work either. Then I go into debug mode to sort of figure out what the problem is. So here I test another method, which is to add global variables. So see here, speed, it's on 0 at the minute, and I added a line of code that said if speed was 0, play idle animation, which is the animation that's playing at the minute. Here we go. So sprite 8 directional speed is less than 0, more than 0, set speed to 1. If speed trigger once here, that will only trigger the animation once. That's where I got it wrong, because it would only go to that one frame, then it would just stop playing. So speed equals 1, set animation to walk, play from beginning, start animation. And then once they release the key and the character stops moving, in theory, the global variable should move back to 0. And it did, but the idle animation and walk animations did not work properly. So I learned from them mistakes, and I moved on to another method of testing this, and this was using the arrow keys on the keyboard. So when the player was to click, say, the up arrow, the animation would then play. When they release that key, it would then stop. Yet again, this in theory should work. Pretty sure it's in this video. If not, it might be in this other one here. Okay, animations, here we go. This is where it functioned correctly. Finally, I added a function, functions. I added a function, so when the call walk function is, the walk function is called, the sprite animation for the main character would switch to walk animation. And then if idle function was called, the animation was set to idle. This did work in the end after a few messing about the code. So I switched all of the, so here I said about when I was pressing the arrow key, it would go to sprite animation walk, but I replaced all these with the functions, so it's a lot more efficient, and also you can sort of keep track of what would play when that animation is triggered, because I can just add another line of code to the function here to say sort of play sound walk when walk function is called. So that'll come in handy later as well when I start recording my own audio to add to the game. So it's a more efficient method than what I experimented with previously, sort of going from the if is 8 direction movement moving, trigger this, and also that didn't work, and also going from calling animations, which did work, but it wasn't as efficient as I had liked. So that is why I chose the function method, because functions are generally used within sort of professional development because they're easy to keep track of. And as I said, you can add anything to the function and then it will play when it's called, instead of you are physically updating the line of code for every single sort of trigger event. It's just a lot more easier to just stick with the functions. So here we can see it working. Here we go. See, so the animation is working here, and I am moving right, it's just that the screen's very big. There we go, and it stops when arrow key is released. It's very good. So that is what I applied from my testing and sort of progressed through solving these problems into my alpha build. So another thing that I mentioned earlier, let's go back to my website. Let's go back to my journals. Here we go. So that was week 6. Nope. 7. Here we go. I thought I started it. This is it. So the areas that I thought I could have improved upon, what were obviously the animations. Obviously, as I mentioned, I went through many phases of testing and sort of bug fixing to get it to the stage that it is now. And so yeah, so this is just states what I've been through before. And obviously here I said another area that I feel I could have improved upon was the UI designs, because if we go back to here, they are very basic, and they're very blocky, and they don't really fit the theme. But as I said here, although I'm in alpha build at the moment and have several build versions to go before final hand-in, I believe that my UI design could be significantly improved in terms of aesthetics and player feedback. Now obviously I touched upon the player feedback a little bit with the animations here, as you can see on screen, but I felt that it could be improved further. But I would touch back upon this after I've gathered feedback from players from my playtest session, which is coming up 2 weeks time, and then add the aesthetics back into it. So as long as it's functioning at the moment, I don't see a problem with that at the moment. I think I can just focus on the main game elements functionality at the moment, and then move on to the aesthetics and sort of the UI design in my later builds. So yet again, I've set some more targets for myself, and that is to ensure that I continue to update and reflect upon my planning documents for a smoother development process. Finish building my alpha build by implementing the mechanics needed. So yeah, I haven't implemented the lighting effects yet into my game, but that will be coming up probably next week, as I've stayed on my Gantt chart and also my daily targets. Yeah, my daily targets, and also conduct a PlayStation. That will be coming in about 2 weeks' time, and then I'll reflect upon that, write it up on my website, go through what I have done, and also update and improve my design of my UI systems, which would follow on from that play session. So after